Welcome to this week's Midweek meditation. We live in a time when people seem to think it is okay to be openly critical of others. Don't get me wrong, there are times when things need to be challenged, and then we should not be afraid to speak out. But increasingly, it seems to be becoming acceptable to say cruel and sometimes discriminatory things and expect to get away with it. Some people hide behind free speech, while others hide behind anonymous pseudonyms on social media. But it comes down to the same thing in the end. We pass judgment on others. Jesus had plenty to say on the subject. In Matthew chapter 7 verse 1 it says, "Do not judge others so that God will not judge you." And then in verses 4 to 5, "How dare you say to your brother, 'Please let me take that speck out of your eye,' when you have a log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will be able to see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." Strong words, but a reminder that none of us are perfect. In the past, Christians often had a reputation for being holier than thou, basically thinking they were better than everyone else, and so could pass judgment on another's actions. I say in the past, but I think it still lingers, and maybe with some justification. Jesus makes it clear that it isn't acceptable, and that we need to be self-aware and face up to the fact that a lot of the time we all fall short of the mark. Mostly we just don't think before we speak. The words come flowing out before we have thought about the consequences, and before we know it, we have hurt someone for no reason. In these days of social media, words spread further and faster than ever before, and incredible damage can be caused in a very short space of time. Every time there is a major incident, the police ask people not to speculate on social media, but lots of people ignore that. Quite recently there was the missing person case involving Nicola Bulley, which illustrates what can happen when people start discussing things online without considering the consequences. As well as saying some incredibly insensitive things, people started turning up in the village where she lived. The result of all this was to hamper the investigation and cause tremendous distress to her family and friends. In James chapter 3 verses 5 to 6 it says, "Just think how large a forest can be set on fire by a tiny flame. And the tongue is like a fire. It is a world of wrong, occupying its place in our bodies and spreading evil through our whole being." James was writing a letter to all God's people scattered over the whole world, and the message is just as relevant to us today as it was when it was written. A couple of weeks ago, our reading in church was 1 Corinthians chapter 13. In verse 1 it says, "I may be able to speak the languages of men and even of angels, but if I have no love, my speech is no more than a noisy gong or a clanging bell." Maybe this is the key to it all. If we have no love, our words mean nothing. In certain situations, they can cause real harm. In Matthew chapter 5 verse 9, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," which suggests that our focus should be on bringing people together and looking to find solutions rather than just criticizing. Lent is a time for reflection, so maybe it is a good time to be thinking about the things that we say. When we are able, it is definitely a good idea to stop before we say or write something that we might regret later. 3 questions that can be quite useful to ask ourselves are: is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Facts can often get mixed up with opinions, and that can make it difficult to know sometimes if we can believe what we hear or read. We also know that there are people who deliberately spread malicious gossip or conspiracy theories, especially online. If we're not sure whether something is true or not, then should we really be passing it on? Is it kind? Kindness is one of the fruit of the Spirit that is mentioned in Galatians chapter 5 verse 22. so it is clearly something that we should be striving for. It's a question of seeing things from another person's point of view and thinking about how they might receive what we say or send in a message. Surely we should be aiming to encourage others rather than knock them down. Is it necessary? Sometimes it is important to get things out into the open and have a discussion about a difficult subject. But how often is that really the case? A lot of the time we speak or write without thinking about the consequences, because we just want to get our point across. Words can be such powerful things. We can probably all remember a time when somebody said a word of praise or encouragement when we needed it most. It sticks with us and helps us when things aren't going so well. So maybe that is what we should be aiming to do for others during Lent and beyond. Look to praise and encourage whenever we can. Have a good day.